Hey there everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're going to be looking at a bunch of improvements to every single pre-spec in the game in the latest beta build for Shadowlands. So pretty exciting stuff. We're going to start with Shadow Priest and then we'll look at Holy and Discipline as well. Obviously, I'm cheating a little bit for the Shadow Priest. I'm going to combine two patches, this week's patch and last week's patch. Essentially, the changes that they've made to the Priest since the last video I did on the Shadow Priest, which was the debut of the Shadow Priest rework. So very exciting. Make sure you check out that video first so you actually understand what we're talking about here. But there's been a number of tweaks to this. The first tweak, which was the last patch, is that they have improved the channel times. This is something I criticized, is that casting spells while you are... like casting Mind Blast and stuff while you're channeling Mind Flay, or casting Searing Nightmare while you're channeling Mind Seer. They're big parts of the spec. I didn't like that. Now, you guys left comments saying that you really did like that. Well, good news for both of us because they've really improved it. Mind Flay now has a 4.5 second channel time. That's, improves with your haste. And Mind Seer has a 4.5 second channel time. So this, in my opinion, makes it flow much better. The big criticism I had of casting while channeling was that it was actually very clunky. You could easily make your GCDs clash into each other, have the channels cancel early and not be able to be refreshed. And it just didn't flow quite right. This entirely fixes that problem. There's now a much better flow to the spec. So a small change, but that really makes the casting while channeling thing very enjoyable. So that's super, super good. They have also received feedback that the Dark Thoughts, which is your new passive, where for every shadow damage over time effect you have on the target, so Shadowward Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Devouring Plague, you have a chance with Mind Flay or Mind Seer to trigger ticks, to trigger a Dark Thought, giving you an instant cast Mind Blast. So they took the feedback that this wasn't proccing enough in single target, and they've upped the proc chance. I actually think they could maybe have it be like 3% proc chance on Mind Flay, 2% on Mind Seer or something, so that this doesn't get too crazy in AoE. But needless to say, this is a positive change that is going to make it a lot easier to maintain. It's just, yeah, you're going to get more procs, and more procs is good. So let's see if we can get a proc here. Not sure if we can. Put a Devouring Plague on him, and I guess then we'll therefore channel Mind Flay on him. Maybe a bad idea to channel this on two targets at once, but oh well, we're committed now. We've decided. We'll just stick with one target. There you go. So we've got our proc. It still has a very short cooldown. It's short duration, but it's okay. One issue I still have with this, and I'll see if I can get this to happen to us here, is that it can be a little bit clunky in the sense that when it resets Mind Blast, it gives you 2 charges of Mind Blast, which has a downside in that it's, well, here we go. So if I cast the first Mind Blast, it casts while I'm channeling, but then the second Mind Blast actually still breaks the channel. So maybe one little tweak they could do, I think, to make this flow a little bit smoother. Essentially, like, because Mind Blast is on cooldown, it resets the cooldown and then it gives you another charge. They could probably have it just be that it doesn't give you a second charge, it just resets the Mind Blast cooldown unless you just cast that while you're channeling, so it keeps that flow going. It's a little bit strange that it's like, oh, I can cast this and not break my channel, but because then I have a second charge of Mind Blast and that does break the channel, you instantly just break the channel anyway. It's a little bit weird, so I think it'd be fine if whatever, it just, you could cast them both while channeling, or it won't give you an extra charge. It will, just... yeah, whatever. Something like that I think might work a little bit better. Certainly the increased proc chance, though, it will let you stack up multiple of these now, which is kind of nice, because you can store, I think, up to 5 instant Mind Blasts, which is very fun. But the buff only has a 6-second duration, so it's still a little bit tricky to actually make use of that. But it's still got some intriguing uses, so there you are. A very, very, very positive change. In fact, let me switch out of Legacy of the Void just so it doesn't confuse it. But Void Eruption no longer has an Insanity requirement. So... this is just, again, fixing an issue that was there with the rework that, just needs to be ironed out. So that's great. It was requiring you to have 90 Insanity to activate Void Eruption, which felt absolutely terrible. It didn't make sense. That fit with the old Shadow Priest, but doesn't fit with this new reworked one. So that's now entirely gone. So you can go straight into using your Void Bolt, using those extra charges of Mind Blast, and it's not going to feel bad. So, I mean, like a typical intro rotation, I don't know. I don't know what the perfect one is, but let's say we go into this. We're going to drop this in. We'll summon our Mindbender. And then we're going to go into Void Eruption, straight into a Void Bolt now. Not going to feel bad. We'll drop a Mind Blast, reapply our Devouring Plague, and reapply Devouring Plague again, go into another Void Bolt. And you can see it's quite the action-packed rotation, actually. Lots of stuff going on. Mind Blast into Void Bolt, into Devouring Plague, and Void Form is over. It just gives you that much better flow. The problem was with 90 Insanity, well, the problem with being in Void Form was that you started Void Form, it gave you 2 charges to the Mind Blast, and it gave you Void Bolts. And you just had to cast Devouring Plague, because otherwise you'd overcap Insanity, which was bad. Now you can go straight into those things, which is much, much better. Flows much smoother. And yeah, it just means that at the start of a raid fight, instead of having to sit there for like 10 seconds or whatever to build up to 90 Insanity, you can actually, once you hit 50 Insanity, you throw out your Devouring Plague, and then you're into the Void Eruption. So much smoother, much smoother. So very nice improvement. They have also adjusted the damage numbers on lots of different spells to just give them a bit of a better balance. Shadow Word Pain now, of course, doesn't generate Insanity and does 175% increased damage to targets below 20% health. So this is really supposed to be used as a movement tool, or mostly just as an execute tool. And it is a very powerful execute tool. But yeah, your damage spells are going to feel just a little bit better balanced. They've also tweaked the Insanity, so stuff is going to, generally speaking, generate a bit less Insanity. I actually have Fortress of the Mind right now, which is putting it off slightly. But yeah, stuff is going to generate just... They fixed the Insanity generation. It's a bit slower, so you're not going to overcap on Devouring Plague all that often. You will still overcap on Devouring Plague a bit, certainly with more haste. Like right now, I have 9% haste. When we get more haste, you are going to be casting Devouring Plague on targets, even when they have maybe like 6 seconds of the buff still, or debuff still on them, which is going to feel pretty bad. It doesn't quite make sense. You're going to, like in single target, you have to dump it, because otherwise you overcap Insanity, and that's a waste. So I kind of would maybe like to see the change where Devouring Plague would just either do bonus instant damage if you cast it on something with Devouring Plague on it already, or that just each Devouring Plague, like Unstable Affliction does on live servers for the Affliction Warlock, that would just be separate debuffs that would be applied. And I think that if it was separate debuffs, it would have a fun single target interaction with your Dark Thoughts as well. So that's something to consider. Hopefully they might do something like that, because that's the one remaining thing, I would say. That's a tiny bit clunky there. Oh, also Devouring Plague now heals you for 50% of damage done, and so does Vampiric Touch. We have some big talent changes then as well. So Surrender to Madness has been slightly nerfed, which is fair. This is like insanely good with the new Shadow Priest. It's, you know, an equal cooldown to your Void form, and it gives you a second Void form. And it also gives you, this used to also give you a full bar of Insanity, which is super powerful. Like that's, you just go into Surrender to Madness and instantly Devouring Plague 2 other targets. It was nutty good. So they removed that. I mean, it still gives you the 25-second Surrender to Madness buff, where you generate twice as much Insanity and you can cast while moving, so you'll still get absolutely monumental tons of damage out of this. Of course, if the target doesn't die within 25 seconds, you're going to die, so that's the bad thing, but this is still insanely strong in Mythic Plus, and this is looking extremely likely on any fights with ads, like on any fights where you can kill the mob within the 25 seconds and get the benefit of that extra Void form out and the extra Insanity generation. This looks insanely strong. So yeah, but it's good that it got a bit of a nerf. It might still be too strong, we'll see. And Legacy of the Void also got a big buff. Sorry, I've got an itchy nose, a few allergies here. But Void form, again, no longer has a duration, but Insanity will drain increasingly fast until it reaches 0. So this is like the Legion and BFA Void form. What they've changed is that now it also gives you a stacking haste buff. So that's back, so that's very, very cool. 1% haste every 2 seconds. It's not a massive deal, but it's something. And also, they're changing how this is implemented. What it's doing right now is Void Bolt is going to extend Devouring Plague on nearby targets by 6 seconds. Now, what they actually wanted to do is just refresh it on your main target. So potentially you could get like Devouring Plague up on 2 targets, go into Void form, and then keep Devouring Plague rolling on both of them. Like that might work. I'm not sure if that's the intent, but I mean, let's just test it out here on a single target. Let's just pure single target. Let's see how it goes. I guess we'll grab Fortress of the Mind to give us the best shot here, I suppose. Again, sorry for the itchy nose. So we're gonna, I guess we'll put on Vamp Touch first. We'll go into Mind Blast, put on our Shadow Word Pain, and we're gonna build up to the 50 Insanity here required. We're not gonna, I guess we will Power Infuse. We might as well Power Infuse, right? I'm going to summon in my Void guy, put on that. I'm going to Void Eruption. Okay, I'm going to spend my Mind Blast now. Mind Blast, Void Bolt. And you can see it's massively increasing the duration on this, which is huge. Going to reapply Shadow Word Pain. We're going to reapply this. I should have done a Void Bolt there. That would have been much better. And we're just trying to see how long can we stay in here. Of course, we're going to cancel to cast Void Bolt on cooldown, cast Mind Blast on cooldown. That's very important. And we're getting absolutely massive duration here. As you can see, another Void Bolt. We actually have a 20-second Devouring Plague. So like I said, this is not the intended thing for them to do. I'm not sure what the uptime was there on the buff. Can I actually see that? Can I actually see that? Let me see. Can I add like... Is there like a buff uptime? Buff uptime? Can I see? Oh, oops. So we got a 25-second Void form there out of that. And again, that is going into it. That's a 25-second Void form. I probably didn't play it optimally. That did obviously require Power Infusion, and that's a baseline 9% haste. So 25 seconds. I think it's kind of cool. It's certainly nice to see Legacy of the Void get buffed up. It might be a bit disappointing to some people if this remains like, if this gets too powerful, but I think it's certainly fun. You got a pretty crazy level 50 now. Like, you got the insanity draining Void Form gameplay, which personally I really like, so I think that's cool that it's going to be there. Surrender to Madness, which is also completely nuts. Or then Ancient Madness, which is like the more standard one, just 30% crit chance when you go into Void Form. So massive crits and massive shadowy apparitions and stuff coming out when you go into Void Form. So lots of cool choices there. There you go. Another few changes to the talents. Psychic Link got slightly nerfed. This is now 50% of Mind Blast damage being shared. I think that's just kind of to compensate for the fact that Dark Thoughts was buffed, so you will get more Mind Blasts out than you were before. So I think that's totally fine. Come back to Shadow Crash in a second. Void Torrent also got its insanity generation nerfed, so it now generates 30 insanity. I think this is a good change. Again, the issue that you had with this in single target when it generated 60 insanity was that you'd put a Devouring Plague on your target, you'd Void Torrent them, and then you'd be sat there with a minimum, and probably more, of 60 insanity, and you're going, well, in single target, I've just refreshed Devouring Plague to max duration, so what happens if I generate more insanity now? I'm just not going to be able to spend it. So yeah, I think that's a good change. Unfurling Darkness has also been slightly changed, where after you cast Vampiric Touch on a target, your next Vampiric Touch within 8 seconds is instant cast and does 1,600 shadow damage immediately. This effect can't occur more than once every 15 seconds. This is basically a change to make you not use this in single target, right? It's so not really a single target thing. Single target, Fortress of the Mind is the best choice. Death and Madness is cool for sniping. Unfurling Darkness now is really about multi-dotting and multi-target. I think it's fine. I find it's a little bit... I guess I'm going to have to make a weak aura for it to track that instant cast and kind of use the instant cast effect. It kind of might throw you off the rhythm a little bit without that. Takes a bit of getting used to, but it's cool. I think it's cool. And then finally, Shadow Crash has seen a rework. So, Shadow Crash now comes as a 3-charge, 1-minute recharge ability that has a minimum range, by the way. It has a minimum range of 20 yards and a very long range of 60, so 20 to 60 yards, which is weird. This is going to do about 1,000 shadow damage when it lands. It's going to hit everything in the area, so good AoE damage, but it's also good in single target. If you hit a lone target, so one target only, they're going to take 25% more damage from your next Shadow Crash within 15 seconds. This stacks up to 2. So either, and this generates 8 insanity, which is the same amount as a Mind Blast. Mind Blast being buffed by Fortress of the Mind. Without Fortress of the Mind, it's 8 insanity. This is 8 insanity, so same thing. So this is very simple. You can have multiple charges, and you can just use these whenever you want if you're using them for AoE. If you're using them for single target, you're probably just going to bank them up and then drop them all at the same time. So, for example, I'll fire one here, fire another one, and another one, and you really want to use them all together because of that that buff. So if we look at our combat log, well, the first one did like 900, second one did 1,100, third one 1,400. So stacking up that damage buff, which means you do want to pool those charges for single target. There's no point in doing it like every 14 seconds. You're not going to get an extra charge. Just drop them all at once in one go, pretty much, and as long as the rest of your rotation is flowing just fine. And yeah, it's interesting. So I don't really know what to think about this one. I don't know. We'll see what it's like to play with. I'm probably more attracted to just the Auspicious Spirits or Psychic Link, just passively more damage happening. That feels really good. So we'll see. But there you go. That is a change there. We also have some changes to our PvP talent. So there is the Lasting Plague now. This increases the duration of Devouring Plague by 6 seconds and makes Devouring Plague a 12-second dot, which is really good. That's going to be great in Arena for multi-dotting. Amazing in Battlegrounds, of course, get more Devouring Plagues up and more people, so that's very cool. They've removed one of the talents, which made Void Form not drain Insanity when you were stunned, because obviously, unless you're running Legacy, the Void Form doesn't drain Insanity. We have a new talent, which is Thought Steal. This has come back, I think, from the past. PvP talent, 1.5 minute cooldown. Peer into the mind of the enemy, attempting to steal a known spell. If stolen, the victim cannot cast that spell for 20 seconds. You can only use this on humanoids with mana. And yeah, so kind of interesting, right? So yeah, you guys that are into PvP can think of what particular uses this will have. It will certainly disrupt the enemy. Like, you could steal something really cool and really make them very upset. Like, I don't know, maybe steal a Greater Pyroblast or a Divine Shield or something like that. Could be kind of interesting. I'm not sure what the rules are with this one, but it's kind of fun. And they also tweaked Driven to Madness. Yes. When Void Form is not active, being attacked reduces the cooldown of Void Eruption by 3 seconds. So kind of cool. Lets you get into Void Eruption much more frequently. So that could be pretty good. And yeah, they are the changes there to the to the stuff. And also, obviously, Psychic Link is no longer a talent. It's no longer a talent either in PvP. So not too many PvP talents to choose from, but there you go. The final thing I want to touch on here for the Shadow Priest then are the Fey Guardians. This is the reworked version of your Covenant ability with the Night Fae. And this has also been slightly tweaked in this particular beta patch as well. So the way it works, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. You get 3 Fairy Guardians for 20 seconds, right? So just a flat 20-second duration. There's a Wrathful Fairy. This is going to go onto whatever target you cast Shadow Word Pain on. This makes direct attacks against the target restore, for you as a Shadow Priest, 3 insanity. So just some constant extra insanity generation for those 20 seconds. Your Guardian Fairy is going to go into whatever target you Power Word Shield. This starts automatically on you, the Shadow Priest. You don't need to cast anything, so automatically starts on you. This gives 10% damage reduction, so that's quite nice. And then the Benevolent Fairy, this one's huge, increases the cooldown recovery rate of a major ability by 100%, and this follows your Shadow Mend. So this affects 2 things actually for you. This affects your Mindbender or Shadow Fiend and your Power Infusion. So this is potentially very strong. Why? Why is this potentially very strong? Because Void Form is a 90-second cooldown. Power Infusion is 2 minutes. They don't sync up, and you really quite want them to sync up. Well, with this one, it's much easier to make them sync up, which is very interesting. You can reduce the cooldown of Power Infusion and get that up with your Void Eruption more often, which I think is pretty nice. I mean, let's just go with Misery here, I guess. I don't know. Actually, maybe Twist of Fate, because I need to cast Shadow Word Pain to get this onto them. I'm not sure. We'll do testing to figure out the exact optimal rotation, but hypothetically speaking, let's say it's something like this. So we're going to, like, whatever, Vamp Touch. We'll do a Mind Blast, put our Shadow Word Pain on. We're going to build up some Insanity here. And what we're going to do, we'll do another Mind Blast. Then we're going to Devouring Plague on them. We're going to get our Mindbender out. We're going to start off with this guy. We'll reapply Shadow Word Pain. Then we're going to go into our Void Eruption. We're going to Shadow Bolt, whatever. We're going to then apply our Devouring Plague. I probably messed that up there. That's okay. We're going to put out another Devouring Plague here. I'm going to channel a bit. You can see we're generating tons of Insanity right now. Absolutely tons. And there you go. And that's a rough idea of what your opener may be. I don't know if that is the optimal way, the absolute best way, but that seems like pretty good. I forgot to use Power Infusion, which was the entire point of that, so let's re-record that. I fucked up. Okay, well, let's give that another go, since I forgot to use Power Infusion. So I think what we're going to do, and again, we'll theory craft the best rotation. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with a Vamp Touch, then I'm going to drop my Mind Blast, just so that the Mind Blast triggers the Spiteful Apparition to go towards them. Then, so Vamp Touch, Mind Blast, put Shadow Word Pain on the target, then we're going to channel Mind Flay till we get another Mind Blast. We're going to slap him with the Devouring Plague. Then we are going to summon in a Mindbender. Then I think we're going to pop our Fey Guardians and our Power Infusion, so that we start the Power Infusion cooldown ticking with the Fey Guardians and the Mindbender cooldown be ticking. We'll reapply Shadow Word Pain to move the Wrathful Fairy onto this target. Then we'll go into our Void Eruption, get Void Bolt out, reapply Devouring Plague, start spending our Mind Blast and stuff like that. So roughly speaking, I mean, I'll probably fuck it up. We'll try to do it though. So let's see. Okay, we're going to Vamp Touch. We'll Mind Blast, apply Shadow Word Pain. Then we're going to channel Mind Flay. We might get procs. There we go. We actually got a proc, so that speeds us up a lot. We're going to Devouring Plague. Summon in our little boy here. We're going to pop this. And we should actually have gone into Void Eruption straight away. That was my bad. Right, this guy. Mind Blast. And we're going to try use this stuff on cooldown as much as we can. Reapply. We're going to Shadow Word Pain. I didn't reapply Shadow Word Pain. That was a mistake. Well, we actually have overcapped massively so our resources there and Insanity. So that was a mistake on my end. But you should see, coming up, we'll try to get another Devouring Plague up and kind of leave it there. So nice bit of burst, really powerful burst there. Very cool. Yeah, you should see that, obviously, Mindbender's coming off cooldown quickly. But if you look at the timings here, Void Eruption and Power Infusion, that's the important thing. They are basically synced up. And we essentially carried... Ooh, pop in, hello. We carried all of that Power Infusion buff through all of that Void Form damage bonus. So we did quite a lot of damage. We did quite a lot of burst damage. It's pretty cool, I think. It was pretty fun. So yeah, pretty nice, right? That's sort of the theory with the Night Fae one. Looks pretty good. And the Conduit actually increases the duration of that. Increases the duration of the Night Fae buff, which is nice. And Power Infusion could actually come back maybe too frequently, actually. With that, you'd have to just have it sat unused for a little bit. But yeah, like I said, maybe not the perfect rotation, but I think something like that is, broadly speaking, what your rotation is going to look like with this. So this looks really good for Shadow Priest right now, I have to say. Very, very, very good indeed. We also, finally, for the Shadow Priest then, have some changes to a couple of conduits. The first one was Dissonant Echoes. This one actually seems really good now. So what it was doing before, which made sense to the old Shadow Priest, was whenever you cast Void Bolt, it gave you a 5... At rank 1 up to the max rank conduit gave you a 20% chance that the Void Bolt would just reset its cooldown. Obviously, that wouldn't really be good with a new Shadow Priest because you're not doing Void Bolt that much, you're being in Void Form that much. So now, it still has that effect, but it also is going to make it so that whenever you Mind Flay, I think each Mind Flay tick is going to have a chance to make Void Bolt castable, even while not in Void Form. And Void Bolt obviously generates, I think it's 15 Insanity, so it generates a lot and extends the duration of your dots, and it does really good damage. It's like a super duper Mind Blast, basically, so that's really, really good. I'm not sure what happens. It maybe just replaces the Void Eruption button. We will obviously be testing the Shadow Priest in even more detail, because this is you know, the class I mained in BFA, right? So yeah, we'll obviously do that in more detail, but that seems pretty cool, and we'll spice up that single target rotation even more whenever you're Mind Flaying. Again, you have the chance to proc Instant Mind Blast and also the chance to proc Void Bolt, so very cool. And then they also changed the Haunting Apparitions. So what this does now is it increases the damage of your spectral apparitions, your shadowy apparitions, excuse me, by 5 to 20% based off of the level of the conduit. So they're not doing a massive amount of damage right now, and I am obviously running Auspicious Spirits, but in AoE, this should get pretty good. Like, if you're able to multi-dot lots of things, each Mind Blast is sending a Spiteful Apparition, or Shadowy Apparition, sorry, at everything. So that could end up, you know, maybe being okay in terms of damage. Not the most exciting thing in the world, though, but it could be okay. Definitely the Dissonant Echoes one seems quite fun in terms of gameplay. And yeah, that's sort of a feel for where the Shadow Priest is at and how it's looking in the current patch and the beta. So honestly, overall impressions, their things are starting to look really, really good. I think they're smoothing stuff out. The talent tree is getting better. They're fixing, you know, the channel increases, removing Insanity from this. It's just flowing a bit smoother. It flows really well. The spec, it's a really good spec now, guys. It feels great. Good spec. Thumbs up. Let's go. Next up, I want to talk about Holy Priest. First of all, I just forgot very quickly to mention the Shadow Legendary here, the new one, newish one, which is Talbot's Stratagem. While you have Shadowward Pain, Devouring Plague, and Vampiric Touch active on the same target, your Mind Blast does 30% more damage. So just a bit more single target damage. Again, like in this case, my Mind Blast was about 19% of my damage in that single target burn phase there. Obviously, that was with Void Form. So, you know, that could be a good damage increase, though relatively bland and boring. Maybe it replicates it more through Psychic Link, so it could be kind of good for that. Let's talk about Holy, though. Let's look at Holy Priest. So, one change that is coming up straight away, again, was something that was a point of criticism for me in my video about Holy Priest, and you guys really didn't like me saying this. Oh my god, people hated me saying this, which was Holy Priest initially had both Holy Nova and Mind Seer. And I said, this seems silly to have two abilities doing the same thing. You guys hated me for saying that. Blizzard seems to have agreed, though. Please don't hate me. It's not my fault. I doubt they even watched the video. But Mind Seer is gone. Holy Priest no longer has Mind Seer, but you do have a rank 2 for Holy Nova, where if Holy Nova deals damage to at least 3 enemies, it will do a second Holy Nova about 1 second later at 50% effectiveness from the same location. Now, funnily enough, this when I was testing it earlier, it just happens anyway. Okay, you don't need to hit 3 enemies, but I mean, this will presumably eventually work. It's just going to make your AoE feel a bit more impactful. So this is just a nice thing, right? Holy Nova is going to be better in AoE. This is there to replace the reduced global cooldown of Holy Nova. So Holy Nova, like I just did a Shadowward Pain, it no longer has the shorter global cooldown. So this also improves it for me. Yeah, rather than having to just like the super spam, like whatever, Carpal Tunnel, spam the heck out of Holy Nova, just meh. This is now more mana efficient as well, because you're just going to cast it a little less regularly, but you are going to get that extra cast out, which looks visually quite cool. So, in my opinion, a pretty positive change, and there you are. There is a new talent for the Holy Priest as well, Renewed Faith. Your healing is increased by 10% on targets with Renew on them, with your Renew on them. So that is very cool. So it's going to make Renew quite important. You can intentionally put this on like your tank in Mythic Plus to make sure that they are getting extra single target healing if you need to focus healing into them. So that's quite positive. Be interesting to see how this competes with the other ones. Obviously big talent synergies here though with this, because Benediction gives Prayer of Healing a 25% chance to put Renew in each target it heals. And of course Holy Word Salvation applies Renew to everybody, like your entire raid group, on top of the other stuff it does. So in combination with those things, I think Renewed Faith is looking like could be pretty potent. Again, someone will crunch the numbers and figure out how it compares. So like, is it better than Trail of Light in a dungeon scenario? Is it better than Enlightenment in a raid scenario? Someone will figure it out and work it out. I think right now this looks pretty good with nice little talent synergies with these, which are fun talents. So yeah, pretty good there. There are also a couple of PvP talents I do want to touch on very quickly. So there was a PvP talent called Divine Attendant, which I believe did buff your Guardian Spirit, and that's now gone. But there's now a thing called Divine Ascension, right? Divine Ascension, which is really fun. You ascend into the air, out of harm's way, and while floating, you're able to cast helpful holy spells. So this is really fun. Again, you could check out some PvP footage of Holy Priest playing, but this could be very, very nice. 1 minute cooldown, so a big defensive cooldown to escape from harm's way. It's very like the death from above thing that Havoc Demon Hunters can do. So that's awesome. Very, very awesome. So a big bonus to the PvP toolkit for the Holy Priest, on top of now having lots more damage spells with shadow spells, and not just being stuck on only holy spell school and being locked out of everything if you're kicked and stuff like that. So yeah, great change there. One bad change, actually, in my opinion. Let me find it. Here it is. Flash Concentration. This legendary has been nerfed, which I don't really understand. Now what it does is each time you cast Flash Heal, Heal has its cast time reduced by 0.1 second, and healing increased by 3%, stacking up to 5 times. This just seems so underwhelming. This seems so bland. I don't quite get it. This just doesn't seem very good to me at all. This was previously reducing Heal's cast time by half a second per stack. So with 5 stacks, 2.5 seconds off, it made your next heal instant. So 5 flash heals, get a big instant heal. That was pretty good. I don't really see what the point of this new version is. I hope it's some sort of oversight or a mistake. It doesn't seem... I mean, even the old version of the Legendary, 5 flash heals for 1 free heal, that didn't even seem that good. I probably wouldn't bother with it compared to getting, you know, the free cheat death with Spirit of Redemption, or getting, like, the Narrow, which is kind of fun, or, you know, getting much... This one was the one I enjoyed the most, testing it out in dungeons, just getting much more cooldown reduction on your Holy Words. That felt really, really good. So yeah, I don't know. This is a weird one. But anyway, it's been nerfed. So if you were really looking forward to this Legendary, sorry, I guess. And then also, finally, they did nerf the Lasting Spirit Conduit, which was your conduit that buffed up your Guardian Spirit, which I think is also fine. I think it used to add 5 seconds onto the duration, while also having a scaling buff that increased its healing, the healing that people receive. It now increases the duration by 2 seconds, which I think that's fine by me. So 12 seconds of Guardian Spirit instead of 15. Like 15 seconds of Guardian Spirit is kind of nutty, especially when you consider with Guardian Angel, the Guardian Spirit does have a 60-second cooldown. So yeah, I think that's totally cool. I think that makes sense. It's still a really good conduit, so very good for, again, you know, dungeons or PvP scenarios. You're still going to be pretty powerful with the Guardian Spirit. Just with all those things stacking up together, it might have been a bit too strong. So I think that's fair. Finally, for the Discipline Priest, we actually have the Discipline Priest still has both Holy Nova and Mindseer. So there you are. In terms of AoE, if we do like, let's do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Holy Nova. So 6 Holy Novas did about 4.9k damage. Again, they also have Holy Nova rank 2, like the Shadow Priest, like the Holy Priest does, where Holy Nova will cast a second time if you hit 3 enemies. Of course, that's bugged, as you can see right there. We did it against 2. Now it just works all the time. But if you're hitting at least 3 enemies, it's going to do the second Holy Nova for half effectiveness, and that is to replace Holy Nova not having the shorter GCD like it used to. If we compare that to Mindseer, so if we do 2 Mindseers, it should give us a similar thing. I believe that they do pretty comparable damage. I believe that they're almost identical. And there you go. You can see, actually, in this case, Mindseer did slightly more damage. Obviously, it is at range. It's channeled. It costs slightly more mana as well. So, I think, roughly speaking, yeah, I think it costs like 100 more mana. Maybe no, it costs less mana. Yeah, it costs a lot less mana. So it's more mana efficient. It does more damage, but it doesn't have the healing effect baked into it that Holy Nova does. And obviously you can channel it at range, and it's a shadow spell. But yeah, it actually does pretty good damage. Like compare it to Smite. So I could, you know, these single target dummies don't work. They murder. This one might work. I think they otherwise murder you though. Don't murder me, please. So like 3 smites versus 1, 2, 3. I guess this would be equal to maybe 4 smites right now. Smite will do a bit more damage in single target, but this is not crazy far behind, which is important when we come to a fixed. It now works. Shadow Covenant has been updated and now works, and this is awesome. This new talent, very, very cool, right? So Shadow Covenant. You make a shadowy pact, healing the target and 4 other injured allies within 30 yards for 1,500. And for 9 seconds now, your shadow spells do 25% more damage, and your shadow spells also do 25% more healing. But you cannot cast holy spells. So this is really, really good because obviously you can still heal with Shadow Mend, and it makes Shadow Mend more powerful. So that's quite a perk. But I suppose a typical rotation is going to be something like you're going to, use Power Word Radiance. Get Atonement out on your group. So let's say in group content, I want to burst heal my team in group content. I think what you might do in like a dungeon, like a Mythic Plus dungeon, I'm going to obviously apply Shadow Word Pain to the target in advance, right? Then I'm going to do a Power Word Radiance, get an Atonement up on my whole team. How long does that Atonement last, actually? I'm not entirely sure. So that only lasts for 8 seconds, so that is maybe a downside. You might even blanket them a bit with Shadow Man first for longer Atonements or something like that. But let's say you do a Radiance, okay? You could even summon in a Mindbender, like summon in your Mindbender. Put on Shadow Word Pain, summon in Mindbender, pop a Power Word Radiance, get Atonement on everybody, then pop your Shadow Covenant, so that your shadow spells are going to do 25% more damage. Then drop Schism. You could drop Schism then Shadow Covenant, but Schism is more powerful, so you drop Schism after, and obviously Shadow Covenant makes Schism more powerful. Schism doesn't make Shadow Covenant more powerful. This being like 25% buff, this is a 40% buff, so do the stronger buff second. So go Shadow Covenant, Schism, then drop a Mind Blast, then drop a Shadow Word Death with specifically the Kiss of Death legendary. Where is it? Here we go. We're Shadow Word Death doing Atonement healing, right? Doing Atonement healing, so do a Shadow Word Death, which is going to hit for 1,300 compared to Mind Blast hitting for 800. And then fill in with some Mind Seer spam. So you could potentially do that. So let's say hypothetically, let's do that. Let us drop in Shadow Word Pain. We'll summon in our Mindbender. We will do our Power Word Radiance. Then we're going to do this. We're going to apply our Schism. We're going to Shadow Word Death first, I suppose. Then we will Mind Blast. And then we can fill in with Mind Seer. And yeah, you can see it actually shows with your bars what you can cast as well. And that sort of like perfectly fits in terms of the damage we just did. So the Mindbender did lots of damage. You can see Schism did a massive ton of Atonement healing. Mindseer did plenty as well, actually. Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Pain, and Mind Blast. Like, we just did a big chunk of damage. 15,000. And of course your Atonement is healing for, what is it? How much does Atonement heal for? I can't remember off the top of my head. Atonement heals for, is it here? Half of the damage done. So we would have just healed everybody in our party in that little burst window for 7,500, which is, about a third of a health bar on everybody, which is not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. So a nice little combo there. Again, you could even just use Shadow Covenant and spam out Shadow Mend for just more instant upfront healing. That would work as well. That would be totally fine. Lots of different things you can do with that. One unfortunate thing that you probably noticed there, because I think I did have the proc, is that the Power of the Dark Side proc, hopefully they will update this. If you read this, Shadow Word Pain has a chance to empower your next penance with Shadow, increasing its effectiveness by 50%. Unfortunately, you can't cast this, as you saw during Shadow Covenant. It doesn't work. I think that would be kind of nice. If Power of the Dark Side would let you do that, that would be kind of fun. Because then you could go into it, you could do your Shadow Covenant, do Schism, you could have Shadow Word Death, Mind Blast, and then your Shadow Word Power of the Dark Side penance, and you could get a ton of healing, and that would feel a little bit better. Like, Mind Seer is still pretty good for that single target damage. Obviously, you can't fill in with Smite. But yeah, so there you go. I think that's kind of interesting, right? So very, very nice to see that talent is actually in there and working. And I think this talent is going to be great. It feels very, very fun. I think it's awesome. And yeah, sort of changes up your damage rotation just that little bit, where with your big ramp up, this can make your ramp up even more powerful. You just, instead of filling with smites at the end of it, you're going to fill in with Mind Seer. And obviously it does sort of rely on this legendary, where Shadow Word Death does do atonement healing to get value. Again, you can imagine Shadow Word Death is going to do almost a bonus 200% damage. It's going to hit, like, it hits for 1,400 right now. It probably hits for about 3,000 on something below 20% health. And you power that up by Schism. You power that up with Shadow Covenant as well. That's going to do... Well, it's going to hurt you a lot. It's really going to chunk your health bar. Like, oh boy. But it's also going to absolutely do a chunk of atonement healing. So very interesting sort of execute healer stuff going on there. Which is kind of nice. I think I like that. So there you go. Also worth noting... one thing I was also looking at, because I did discuss this with the Shadow Priest, is, again, Power Infusion, syncing up with other cooldowns. Okay, so Rapture is, of course, a 1.5 minute cooldown. And more importantly, I suppose, Evangelism is a 1.5 minute cooldown. Power Infusion is a 2 minute cooldown. Now, what you can do, you could obviously run the Legendary if you wanted, which will... Where is it? I think it's this one. Yeah. You can cast Power Infusion on an ally and gives you the benefits as well. And you could combo that with, there's a conduit that reduces the cooldown of Power Infusion when you cast it on an ally. So you could use that to sync up Power Infusion with your Evangelism for some really mega huge ramp healing. You could alternatively go for the Night Fae with the Fae Guardians Covenant ability. Specifically for the Benevolent Fairy effect, which increases the cooldown recovery of your major abilities by 100%. And this will go on to whoever you heal with your Shadow Mend. This automatically starts on you. And this lasts for 20 seconds. So the downside here, if you want this on you, the benefit is that it reduces Mindbender cooldown, which is good. In fact, it should reduce it so that you get one Mindbender outside of it, and then one Mindbender with every Evangelism, and therefore with every big ramp up for Atonement healing. That's cool. But more importantly, it's going to reduce the cooldown of Power Infusion, which is going to let you sync up Power Infusion with Evangelism. Not quite. It's still going to be like 10 seconds later than Evangelism, but if you can delay, that's going to be fine. Or you can get a conduit to extend this effect even longer, so you'll guaranteed get Power Infusion back for Evangelism for that big, dirty ramp up. So, yeah, I mean, the downside for sure is that, well, you got Fae Guardians on. If you want to get your Power Infusion maximized cooldown, you know, you can't use Shadow Mend on anybody else, right? You can only apply Atonement through Power Word Shield and through Power Word Radiance. So that is something to watch out for. Shadow Mend becomes a no-go. Or I guess with the Conduit, this lasts for 40 seconds. So you want 30-second cooldown reduction on Power Infusion to sync up with stuff. So you could easily use Shadow Mend a little bit. The Fairy could be on other targets for 10 seconds of the time Fae Guardians is up. So you could work around it like that, but it's just something to be aware of. It could be a little bit weird. That you could find that a negative aspect of your playstyle, but it could also be very powerful. Or of course, maybe you don't care about Evangelism. Maybe you're in a dungeon, right? You're in a dungeon, and you're just gonna run the Power Infusion on an ally. Okay, great. So Power Infusion on an ally with my fancy hat. And you're going to run the Conduit that reduces its cooldown, and you're going to run the Fae Guardians to reduce its cooldown even further, and potentially you could get the cooldown of Power Infusion down to like 1 minute, and you could just be Power Infusing yourself and another ally in your party every 1 minute. So either the same ally if they've got a short cooldown, or potentially rotate it between party members for each different like mob pack, and they could each have a cooldown for the mob pack and just absolutely blow things up. That could be freaking insane. So yeah, needless to say, this Covenant looks pretty nuts for Shadow Priest, looks pretty nuts for Disc Priest. Lots of potential plays you can do with that. And there you go, guys. Probably a long video, but they are all the changes for the priest specs. Lots of big changes here. Again, I main priest for most of BFA, so I love this class, and we'll dive more in depth there. But yeah, hope you found that enjoyable and interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.